You're watching the Fantasy Football Bros podcast, the show that'll keep you from coming in last. Now, here's your hosts.
Hey, welcome to the Fantasy Football Bros podcast. We made it, guys, through week one. We made it. It was a good week. I am joined here today by Nick. We are missing our third bro, GD, today, but we're going to lead you guys on a fantasy journey, just us two, fantasy bros. But we're missing JD. He'll be on, I'm sure, the next episode. But first, we wanted to dive into the game last night. It was Thursday Night Football. We had a game between the Giants and the Washington football team, which we kind of thought, I don't know about you, Nick, but I kind of thought this game would be pretty horrible for fantasy-wise because those are two teams with pretty strong defenses. But I think we got we saw some exciting football. Now, the game was very exciting, and so there's some good fantasy-relevant things happening, Nick. What do you have to say about the last night's game?
Oh, I totally agree with you. I almost picked up the Giants' defense thinking that it was just going to be just a defensive battle, but it ended up being a really good one. I think, obviously, in terms of like fantasy value, there was actually a lot that I was not really expecting. I mean, most in particular, Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin had a great game. Mm-hmm. It was kind of crazy. I think he ended up with 17 points, Jimmy, something like that.
I think 22 in half PPR, like 27 in full PPR.
Yeah. So he definitely showed out that yesterday, but like you said, it was just an overall great game for football, the average football fan just watching it too. So all I can say is like the Giants. Oh my goodness, they just totally choked. Honestly, the guy. I was joking with Joe. I was like, this guy's gonna get cut because he jumped offside.
Yeah, he blew
the game.
Yep.
And then also, it had everything too, like Heineke throwing the interception, on a game where they just should have just on the point of the game where they should run the ball
on their own 20 or something.
So Washington football team, division favorites.
Yeah, I think the Terry McLaurin owners should breathe a sigh of relief because after Fitzpatrick went down, that's scary. But Taylor Heineke, the guy might be the real deal, solid wise for fantasy. There was more targets to the receivers this week than there even were last week. I want to say Terry McLaurin had 4 targets last week. Guys like Logan Thomas had 3 targets. I think it was even less. I think the guy who led targets last week was Tonio Gibson. Where was Gibson this week? I don't know. They went with McKissick the whole time. I was listening to another podcast. They're talking about how McKissick's a goblin, the snaps goblin. And I go, that's great. He's a snaps. He comes in there, just takes these snaps. He's he got the touchdown on the freaking red. Yeah. He got the touchdown, and then he gets all the 2-minute drills, all these points.
Oh yeah, which is so weird because Antonio Gibson's a wide receiver first.
Yeah,
he was a transition to a running back. So it's why are they using McKissick? Do they think he's a better pass catcher?
Exactly.
It's a really weird situation, and obviously, we're gonna touch on Antonio Gibson, whether to panic or not, a little bit later. But it's definitely concerning if you're a Gibson owner. But like you were saying too with McLaurin, I mean, Terry McLaurin has never had a good quarterback to throw to.
Yeah,
he's always just had to make do with what he had, and you felt a little bit confident going into the beginning of the season with Fitzmagic, but. He's just making do, and I agree with Taylor Heineke. It looks like he's showing out like he is the real deal. So that's a real good sign for Washington football.
It is very good sign. It is a lot of targets going around. Logan Thomas didn't have a great game, but he had a decent tight end game. If he got a touchdown, I think he would. He's touchdown dependent. It's like you say, it's touchdown or meh. Like a lot of guys, he needs a touchdown or it's just a meh performance, and that's kind of what we saw. It was meh. He probably won't lose you the week, but he's definitely not going to help you win the week. With Terry McLaurin, I want to say the guy's played 32 games and he's had 11 different quarterbacks. I heard a stat like that. It's that's insane, and the guy's still been fantasy relevant. The guy's just a stud and awesome, and he was targeted 13, 14 times. And it was great to have Terry. I went against him in one league, unfortunately. I think Nick even went against him in another league. But I'm a guy who roots for Scary Terry, so it's I like him as a player. So it's tough. Yeah. But
and he looked elite too.
Yeah,
I mean we saw in week 1 that first catch too, where there was literally a literal defender almost picking off the ball going through his hands almost, and he still like made that catch. So Terry McLaurin really making a standout, like being like a number one wide receiver in the league.
Yeah.
So
And
we'll see if
and I'd suggest a lot of people should add McKissick. Honestly, I feel like he got like 16, 17 points. I feel like he's a guy who could maybe be, especially in a full PPR league, be like a flex play for you. Especially, he's like the nice flex play because he gets those touches. Yeah, he's like a Kareem Hunt, and you can get those points. But on the Giants side of the ball, I didn't like any of it except like Danny Dimes, right? He could end up scoring like 29 fantasy points. But here's the thing for you Saquon owners. I know it's like you guys drafted him in the first round. You knew this was going to happen. But I'm sure a lot of you are probably like, gosh, I knew it was going to happen, but this is getting bad. I don't think it's time to panic with him yet. Like, we're not talking about the panic yet, but like with Saquon, you got to hold out. You drafted him to be the first one. You gotta just hold out and kind of deal with it. All the receivers, I have Golladay in a couple leagues. I think Golladay had like 3 receptions yesterday. I didn't like that. So I just don't know if any of these guys are really that fantasy relevant. I think Saquon's the only one who possibly could be on the Giants side of the ball, and then maybe Danny Dimes in streaming situations, but we'll get into that later too.
Can we talk about Evan Ingram? I don't even think he even playing that game. I didn't even see him make.
Yeah, I think it was Rudolph got some of the plays. If there's anything, I didn't see Evan Ingram.
Rudolph.
Yep.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, I remember seeing, Evan Ingram 2 years ago was really good, and now it just seems like he fell off. But yeah, I totally agree with you with the Giants. I mean, only person that I would take is Danny Dimes. Danny Dimes could have easily had like 30 plus points if they wouldn't have held on or blocked it was a holding on that second return for a touchdown. So I'm not really thrilled about that, the Giants offense. I mean, Daniel Jones did make some good passes, but also he did I think he overthrew Darius Slayton in the end zone when it was just like busted coverage, and he was like really wide open and let him a little bit too much. People could argue that Darius Slayton should have came down with it, but I think if you're that wide open, just throw it to him, like underthrow him. There was no one close. Yep. So I think also you need to look at is Sterling Shepard. I think Sterling Shepard had 13 points for half PPR, and he's like maybe the one other person that I would still on my bench. He looked like he's his favorite target. Kenny Golladay, I'm scared. Yeah, he's almost a panic button candidate.
Yeah, exactly. But so this could be a good segue. I feel like we've covered these two teams well enough, and let's move into our segment that we are calling Panic Button.
Panic Button.
So basically how this segment's going to work is we're going to kind of bring a guy up, and we're going to either say yay or nay if we're hitting that panic button on this player. So let's start with this first player we have here, and that is a Mr. James Robinson. Was he a top 10 RB last year? Etienne went down. Now people thought he was going to be the guy. After Etienne went down, we saw him drafted early in rounds. So this is a guy that I wonder if we're going to panic on. Nick, are you panicking on James Robinson?
I'm panicking on James Robinson. And actually, James Robinson was a top 5 running back last year. We talked about it. He had like that volume, which was so important. But you and I talked about it. Like we talked about it when we were covering the Jaguars. Like Urban Meyer loves his committees, and you knew Carlos Hyde was going to be a problem. Carlos Hyde is a problem. Even like it was so weird because like you didn't when they drafted Etienne, you're like, okay, well now he's going to be in like a timeshare with him, and now that they signed Carlos Hyde too, it's like, what was their plan really? With what were they going to do with all 3 of these viable running backs? So it's a kind of crazy situation, but I am panicking on James Robinson. Look, James Robinson rushing ball only got 5 rushes for 25 yards, so he's super efficient. But at the same time, he's only getting 5 rushes.
Yep.
That's sure. Like the game script called on them to pass more because the Jags were down quick. I think it was like 14-0 in like the first quarter, but. Even then, he only had 6 targets for 3 receptions and 29 yards for a total of 6.9 fantasy points. I'm panicking. And you probably, if you picked James Robinson, you probably picked him to be one of your RB2. And obviously, with the volume that he's not getting this year, it's concerning.
Yeah.
So I'm hitting the panic button.
Yeah, I'm hitting the panic button. I was hitting the panic button beforehand. If we go back to that episode, I was like, I wasn't sold. I just don't like that situation with the new coach, and I don't like the way a lot of NFL teams treat undrafted free agents. The Jaguars had this opportunity to bolster their team by not getting like an Etienne, by like help maybe their defense a little bit needed help instead of like they had a solid running back. They didn't need the help there. We saw it happen to Eckler. We'll probably talk about him later. Eckler, like he was the undrafted free agent that's kind of getting a little disrespected. Like he should be the guy. I think he won. Fact check me on this. I believe he won Offensive Rookie of the Year. That makes up for anything when you win Offensive Rookie of the Year, or if you're at least a candidate, that should make up for not being drafted. That means the GMs just missed you. But apparently people of course, like James Robinson gets disrespected because he's an undrafted free agent. That's what I feel like's happening here. I think he maybe should do better. Nick brought up a good point with the negative game script. I think that's something to take note of. So we'll have to see. This is, of course, guys, is week 1. So when we're talking about panic button, and don't totally panic because it's week 1. It's like they talk about how guys who end up in the top 10 of different things, top 20 receivers, top 20, they don't even end up being there in the end of the season. Like Christian Kirk, do we really think he'll be like top 20 wide receiver, top 15 wide receiver? No, he won't. I'm sorry, he can't be. I think the guy they drafted is Rondale Moore. I think he'll end up being more important than Christian Kirk. So so when we say panic, take things with a grain of salt. After a few weeks, when we do this in a couple weeks from now and hit the panic button, that's when we probably should start really getting more serious about things, Yeah. But yeah,
this is week 1 panic.
This is week 1 panic button. So take it with So take it with a grain of salt. All right, so we covered James Robinson well. We're both panicked. Let's move on to a wide receiver here by the name of Robbie Anderson. Nick, are you hitting the panic button on Robbie?
This is a tough one. You can go either or, but I would tend to hit the panic button, and here's why. Robbie Anderson was so good last year. We saw him that he was the number 1 receiver in
so many targets
in Carolina. New quarterback, so that means a different chemistry. You and I both talk. We believe that DJ Moore is the better of the receivers between him and Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson's a good receiver. He's just like a deep threat. But we've never seen Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey was gone all of last year, and I'm going to look this up here in between here, but I think Christian McCaffrey had like 80 yards receiving, and of course that's a lot of yard after catch. Yeah. But at the same time, like DJ Moore got 8 targets and 6 receptions for 80 yards, had 12 points, just as much as Robbie Anderson, who ended up with 3 targets, 1 reception, 60 yards, and that 1 touchdown pass. That ended up being what was so good for Robbie Anderson, is having that touchdown. So for me, I am panicking a little bit if I'm Robbie Anderson. And like you said, it's a week 1 panic, so you take that into consideration. But I think DJ Moore is the better receiver, and I think that it's going to be DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey, then Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson is going to be that deep threat. I could be wrong, but I think, that's kind of where I feel it looks like DJ Moore and Sam Darnold have a better connection than Teddy Bridgewater and Robbie Anderson. But what say you?
Yeah, I have to agree with pretty much everything you said. Robbie Anderson was getting a lot of targets. It was actually, I think it switched where DJ Moore they thought was going to be the volume guy last year, and then Robbie Anderson would be more the deep threat. We saw it happen the opposite way. So now that DJ Moore solidified himself as more of like the deep threat guy, and Robbie Anderson's the short pass guy on this team, McCaffrey takes those short passes first. So that hurts you. Yep. And we have to also mention, is it Terrence Marshall? They drafted, I believe that's their new rookie receiver's name. Sure. Yeah, Terrence Marshall. He's someone to watch. I think he's an LSU wide receiver he went in like the second round. He could take a lot of targets away from Robbie Anderson too, and even DJ Moore. So that's just something to keep an eye out on him too. So
yeah, I also want to add to Christian McCaffrey. I just checked 9 targets, 9 receptions for 89 yards.
Yeah, he's taking a lot.
That's going to take up volume from all of those receivers. I mean, think about it.
You only want the deep threat guy, basically.
Yeah. So, I'm panicking.
Yep.
But what are you? You panicking?
I'm panicking because if he didn't catch that ball, it's 0 points. It's like I can't like live on one play. You know, it's like I'm so much a proponent of volume in fantasy. Like I mean, like targets. When I see a guy with a lot of targets not doing that well, like you know, we'll talk about that later. We have some guys we talk about, but he didn't get enough targets. He had 3 targets, 1 reception. That makes me scared. We'll see though. Don't make too rash of decisions with him though. But all right, let's move on to the next figure here, and that is a quarterback by the name of Josh Allen. Now that's crazy. Why are we bringing up Josh Allen? The guy's awesome. And he went against Pittsburgh, but he still had a weak game and didn't look like himself. Are you panicking, Nick, with Josh Allen?
I'm not panicking. I think Josh Allen still had a decent game. I mean, he had 270 yards, passing yards, 1 touchdown, 44 rushing yards. Not a great game in terms of what we're accustomed to Josh Allen like last year. But I mean, like you said, he's playing the Steelers. You know, there's got to be some, learning curve in terms of like how he performs against the Steelers. I mean, you know, he didn't do the best, but I think if he doesn't lose that fumble, he ends up having a salvageable day. He ended up with 17 points, but without that fumble, we're probably looking around 20 points. So, I mean, and you know, like you said, like we were talking about, the Steelers, great defense. So I just chalk that up, and I'm not panicked yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't panic.
If it continues, but I'm not panicked.
Yeah, the only reason he gets like brought up here too is because of his early round draft capital that he had for a lot of people. In our keeper league, Nick got to keep him in a late round. So someone gets him. If you get Josh Allen late round, don't panic. But I feel like if you go like 4th round and you got Josh Allen, it's like you drafted him over a wide receiver. You know, could be a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. So that's why it's a little more of a panic in that situation. But he's Josh Allen. He went against the Steelers. He'll run a bunch of yards. He had a bunch of rushes. He'll get you the points. He's still got Diggs. They got Emmanuel Sanders. They got this Gabriel Davis, Cole Beasley. He has a lot of receivers. There's still a team that's going to throw first because Zach Moss and Devin Singletary, they both stink. So they're not good. Like, well, they're just like
Zach Moss, dude.
Yeah, he gets a healthy scratch. Healthy scratch. Get him off your roster. Since we're bringing up Zach Moss, get him off your roster. What's the point? The only reason the guy's going to play is if someone goes down. So why would I even want a roster spot with him? So that's just another point. There's no point to have Zach Moss on your roster.
But is Singletary an ad, though, to you?
Singletary definitely needs to be on everyone's team. He's a starting running back for a good scoring offense, you know. So that moves us to another running back on a high-scoring offense. Nice transition here. Nick, are we panicking on Clyde Edwards-Hilaire? He had 14 carries for 43 yards, 3 targets, 3 receptions for 29 yards. And half PPR, he only had 8.7 fantasy points. I have this guy in 2 leagues, and it hurt me in both those leagues. Should I panic?
Yeah. No, you shouldn't panic, Jimmy. And by the way, Jimmy, how'd you do in all your leagues, by the way?
Oh, since we're going to bring it up to the audience. I went 0-3, so my advice you take with a grain of salt. It was brutal. I'm still a little bitter, but you know I went 0-3, and here I am trying to give people advice.
Yeah, Jimmy, you're fine. I played Jimmy in our other league, and Darren Waller needed 15 points, and Waller got 19
He got 20,
targets.
22 points, 19 targets, highest targets ever. I'm still bitter about it. Like in his career high in targets, like that week. Really, save it for next week, Gruden. Yeah.
Well, we should have won that game, but I digress. CEH, I'm not panicked yet. I mean, he played against a good front four with the Browns. Browns got a great defense with Jadeveon Clowney. They have Myles Garrett. I'm not panicked yet. I think they have too good of an offensive line for Clyde Edwards-Hilaire to, fail. It was encouraging how much volume he got too. I think Darwin Williams barely played any snaps.
Is it Darrell?
Yeah, Darrell Williams.
He got one carry. Every other carry was him, so he had one carry.
Exactly. He got one carry. So the volume is there, and they're the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to have an amazing offense, and he's going to find the end zone more than he did last year. So I'm not panicked. He played a good Browns defense. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing that scares me about CEH is he's not explosive. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of guys are explosive. So that's the only thing. So I don't know if he can, because a lot of people talk about him having that RB1 upside, but I haven't seen that explosiveness yet that he can be, like the strength, because he's not like the biggest guy. I'm not like, so it's like, it's hard for him to break through. I feel like a lot of tackles and stuff, but he's like a skilled guy. So it'll be interesting to see how it progresses. He could, but we just know Mahomes likes to run it in or throw it into Kelsey. Kelsey's basically like their running back in the red zone because they basically just like do a toss to him.
Run in the red zone. They don't even like to run in the red zone.
Yeah, they don't like to run in the red zone. So.
We'll see. Andy Reid tries to dial
he changes it up though too. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll transition here to someone that you and I both have on different leagues, obviously. But Julio Jones. Julio Jones with 3 receptions for 29 yards and 4.4 fantasy points. And I'll add, Jimmy, his coach called him out.
Yes.
Not a great
Vrabel. What's the coach? How do you pronounce the coach's last name? Vrabel, whatever.
Yeah, Vrabel.
Yeah. I'm not panicked for Julio, but I'm almost panicked for that situation with like Tannehill. They have a new offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith went to the Falcons now, so they have a new offensive structure. So, and last year, the Arizona Cardinals were not a good defense. So does that mean, so it's either 2 options. Either, like there's a few options here. It's like, did Arizona get that much better on defense? Or is like their offense that, like their offensive line struggling that much? Because was it all Tannehill? He got sacked 5 times. Is it him holding the ball too long? Or is it the line failing him? So it's something like, do we panic about that offense? I'm not panicked on Julio Jones. Julio Jones is Julio Jones. When he's healthy and out there, he will probably do well if their offense is doing well. Am I totally confident in Julio? Am I maybe benching him this week actually for Antonio Brown? That's a question I actually have, and I might be because what's his name's again? Atlanta. Antonio Brown's against Atlanta, but I'm not totally terrified for Julio yet. You kind of knew what you were getting when you drafted him. I feel like he was a guy drafted, I want to say the second round 2 years, like the beginning, like the cusp between the first and second round 2 years in a row, and now you got him probably in like the 3rd or 4th round. So I wouldn't panic on him, but I am keeping an eye out, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has more problems to come in the future.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head, dude. Julio Jones, definitely that situation does not look good right now. I think it's a little bit of both. I think that the defensive line for the Cardinals got better, and maybe they're exposing a little bit of the Titans' offensive line. Even Taylor Lewin came out and was just like, "Hey, Chandler Jones, thanks for exposing me." I don't know if you saw that.
But that's funny.
It's definitely. I came into this year thinking that the Titans have a good offensive line, and I'm still going to not change my judgment based on one game. Yeah. Just chalk it up as a bad game. But it's definitely something to keep in consideration. And I agree with you 100%. Julio Jones is Julio Jones. I mean, it is unfortunate that, he gets called out by his head coach, whether it's rightfully so or not. And if you watch the game, you saw that Tannehill and Julio Jones were just never in sync. Yeah. They still have chemistry that they need to work with or establish. So I'm with you. I'm not panicking. I may be, I'm still playing him in the league that I have him in actually both leagues. I think I have him in 2. And I'm still playing him and work, hope that situation gets better. But I'm a little bit concerned. I'm with you there. So
yeah, the whole offense though, like what I might add though is I can't be totally concerned for Julio when Derrick Henry doesn't even have a good game. A.J. Brown only had a good game because of a touchdown. He ended up with like 12 points. That's an game. He's supposed to be like an wide receiver 1. So if I panic on them, there was their whole offense wasn't working. So I can't just put it on Julio. I can't put it all on him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly. But we digress.
Yeah.
I'll let you go with Rodgers, our boy Rodgers.
This is simple for me.
MVP candidate. Yeah. Hold on 1 second. MVP candidate, 133 passing yards, 2 interceptions, 3.3 fantasy points. Jimmy, go for it.
I'm not panicking. We see this happen all the time with Rodgers. It happened like last year when they played the Buccaneers, and I don't know what week that was, but he got owned. He had like 5 fantasy points in that game too, and he still ended up winning the MVP. Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. Like we said, Julio is Julio. He's playing the Detroit Lions this week. Okay, he's gonna have this huge game. I'd play all your Packers, put them out there because it's just going to be that revenge game. Like Rodgers has too much pride to let that happen again. He let it get away from him, from a good defense from the New Orleans Saints. Saints might be a better team than we might have given them credit for. We'll have to see how that works out. But Aaron Rodgers is fine. I'd plug and play him.
Too.
I'd put him in and play him. You know, guys have bad games. He's had plenty of bad games. He's notorious for it. When he has a bad game, he has a huge next game. So, play him. Don't worry. No panic. He's the reigning MVP. It's Aaron Rodgers. Let's not create some sort of hot take talking points to get attention and clicks. It's Aaron Rodgers. He's going to have a great game. To me, that's what I believe. So, Nick, what about you?
I agree. I agree with you. I mean, he's Aaron Rodgers, MVP last year. He didn't play all like OTAs and stuff like that. Just get him back in there. He'll be fine. I play him next week. I'm with you. I play against those Lions.
Monday Night
Those Lions
Football,
look like
fun.
Yeah, those Lions look like they're going to be a team that you want to play teams against.
Yep.
And also, if you have T.J. Hawkinson, good for you.
I know. Gosh, she had like 11 targets. I want to say like 10 receptions. Goodness. Yeah.
Okay. So, what are your thoughts on Tonio Gibson? We already touched on him on week 2. You had back-to-back similar games. Panicking.
Oh, I'm panicked. We've seen him. He's the only one of the few guys we've seen twice. I'm panicked because we thought his role might be bigger, and it looks like his role's kind of similar to last year, maybe even worse than last year. I don't know. The game script should have demanded for Tonio Gibson to get the ball more, I felt like, too. Like, there was no reason that they should have been in some of the situations with McKissick being out there. Like, at the end there, why isn't Gibson running the ball to try to run the clock out? Instead, we're going to throw an interception. It's just, there's just weird plays going on there. Obviously, Ron Rivera likes to use multiple running backs. Like we talked about earlier, we talked about Gibson. The guy used to be a wide receiver, so why isn't he out there receiving? Like McKissick earned a spot though, like too, so you can't really fault it. Like he had a very good game. He got like almost like 100 yards receiving. He had like a lot of yards receiving, So and he got a touchdown in the red zone. I assume he got that touch though, so we shouldn't panic on Gibson not getting the red zone touches because it was a fake, like there was supposed to be a pass play because they would have basically thrown it if they didn't. There was supposed to be a field goal, so they tricked the defense by running it. I don't know. That was a risky play. It worked out for them. I don't know why they did that, but it worked out, so I can't really totally fault them. But I'd take the 3 points from the field goal if I didn't succeed in that play. But that's obviously why McKissick was out there then. So I wouldn't worry about the red zone things. But I'm panicking on Gibson. This is 2 weeks in a row. He hasn't broke like 10 points. And you drafted him early second round. This is an early second round guy. He needs to do better for you. They even they hyped him up. There's like a report on coming out saying like, yeah, he's looking like a CMC role. Really? A CMC role? CMC gets all the freaking catches. Like, don't feed us that if it's like, it's not true. More and more we learn that these beat reporters sometimes don't know what they're talking about. Like we saw it with freaking Niners. Yes, Trey Sermon. They're over they're saying he's the guy, and all of a sudden Eli Mitchell comes out of nowhere and he's the guy. It's like, okay, beat reporters, where were you guys? So you got to take a lot of times what they say with a grain of salt. Gibson, I'm panicking on. Because he hasn't broken 10 points 2 weeks in a row, and he's not involved as much as I'd say. That volume isn't there. He's not involved as much as I'd like him to be.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, we're just kind of on the same wavelength with these things because I think everyone who drafted Tonio Gibson was expecting him to take a bigger role, and they were expecting J.D. McKissick to be less involved. And it's looking like it's the opposite, where McKissick looks like he's more of a viable starter almost now, a flex option on deeper leagues. And he almost looks like he has a Kareem Hunt role, which we talk about as concerning. I mean, like, Tonio Gibson's a pass catcher first. How is he not on there on the first down passing plays? I have no idea. And it might not be anything to do with Tonio Gibson rather than the coaching staff. But I mean, it's a panic for sure. He could be probably grouped in the same position as James Robinson, where it's like they're the obvious choices, but they're not playing him for whatever reason. And ultimately, week 1 is so tricky because we're just guessing. Like we're making all educated guesses. Okay, we have this to work with last year, and we know this. It all comes down to the coach's choices ultimately. And I think that's something that we saw firsthand with the San Francisco 49ers, where everyone is completely blindsided by Trey Sermon being in a healthy scratch, where they low-key kept us thinking that he was going to be the number 2 guy. Elijah Mitchell, who they silently loved the whole year but didn't tell anyone, comes in, has a 100-yard game with a tittle. So It's really weird. That's week 1 football, fantasy football, but it is.
Why do you think?
I digress.
Yeah, Nick. Why do you think they don't like coaches like a McVay and a Shanahan? Why do you think they don't trying to trick the defense? You think is that their main?
I mean, I think that those guys are offensive gurus and they have a game plan. They want to keep everything, suppressed until the actual game. I mean, if you look at that's always been Shanahan. Shanahan's always had multiple running backs, so you could just say that. But I mean, with McVay, he came out and said we're preparing for Justin Fields to be the starting quarterback as well. There was a report that came out about that, and sure enough, Justin Fields comes out for some possessions and plays a couple snaps and even scores a touchdown. Scored a touchdown for Sunday Night Football. So I think they don't like to tip their hand, really, and I think you're going to see that with a lot of offensive guys. And also even like with McVay and Shanahan too. McVay, even when Gurley you saw that his knee just completely give out during the playoffs 2 or 3 years ago. McVay didn't give any insight on who was going to be starter. He just said Gurley's going to be our guy. And then having C.J. Anderson end up being the guy. But that's another story for another day. But I mean, it comes up to the coaches.
Yeah.
So
okay. Let's move on here to a tight end that a lot of people drafted and had a lot of faith in because he was solid last year. It's Mike Gosicki. Nick, are you panicked?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He had 3 targets, 0 points. Anytime someone has 0 points, I'm a little bit concerned. But you do need to keep it with a grain of salt because they did play the Patriots. And Bill Belichick is good at, making people obsolete. I'm not saying that he had a game plan for Mike Gesicki and say, hey, we're going to shut down their
like
tight
he did
end.
To Waller last year?
Yeah, like he did to Waller last year. But I think really, I mean, that whole offense looked underwhelming to me. And I tend to say, give it to Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is one of the greatest coaches of all time, greatest defensive mind coaches. So I'm panicking, but also at the same time, I take it with a grain of salt that he is playing the Patriots, and the Patriots are just a great defense and with a great defensive coaching. Yeah. But what do you say?
I'm more panicked than you. I'd drop him and get another tight end. Why would I need? I like tight ends. Like he's at the bottom. He got 0 points. I'd pick up like a Jared Cook or a Johnny Smith or someone like that who's maybe left over on the waiver wire. It's just I don't like when a tight end does that. I don't trust Tua for starters. And now that just like solidifies it for me that I'm just like how could I possibly play this guy? How important are roster spots for like other guys too? That means if you have to if you're keeping Gosicki on your bench, that means you're gonna have to drop someone else. It's like no, I'm dropping Gosicki and gonna pick up a different tight end. So that's why
it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, we saw last year Tua and Gosicki just weren't. Tua and Fitzpatrick were a different story.
Oh, you mean Gosicki and Fitzpatrick?
Gosicki and Fitzpatrick were a different story, but and Gosicki, it's like I'm with you there, but I still think we don't really know the full thing with the Dolphins offense. I'm not buying in yet, but we'll see what happens. I mean, you gotta say, hey, Bill Belichick, you got Belichick.
he got discount double Belichick. That's a good one. That's a new one. I like that one. All right, so last guy here is a wide receiver, Ayuk. Are you panicking on this guy? They disrespected this boy.
We just talked about how
he's a stud.
Shanahan likes to do these things, and Shanahan came out and said, Ayuk was injured this whole year or all off season during training camp, and they just felt like Sheffield. I think his name's Sheffield, right? Someone that
Trey Sherfield. I think it's like Sherfield or something like that. Trent Sherfield.
They just said he just played better than Ayuk in the preseason, so. That's extremely concerning. Just because Ayuk was someone that everyone drafted in like the 3rd, 4th, sometimes even 5th rounds, expecting him to have a bigger role and be that number one. Instead, it was Deebo Samuel who was.
Yeah, he'll be injured in a couple weeks.
But it's also concerning that Ayuk is still injured because Ayuk was. We talked about this then the 49ers and they're just the training staff just I don't know man, they're just doing something in that locker room.
The training staff buy Mostert for the year. Ayuk's hurt.
Mostert's
Defensive guys down too. Didn't they lose like one of their best DBs?
It's just like part two with injuries with San Francisco 49ers. But I mean, Ayuk is looking like he's someone that's can be on the injury report a lot as well. So I'm panicked if I'm Ayuk holders, but we'll see what happens. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I played him in a league, and he got me a nice goose egg. He's on my bench until he can prove a couple weeks in a row that he's the guy. Like, that's scary that he's like, they took this guy in the first round last year, and now he's like the third wide receiver. And that means fourth receiver because Kittle, so it's like, I'm very panicked because I drafted him. He's like, should be a wide receiver too. I was expecting, he did really well last year. He played like 12 games, got 750 yard total, and then like 750 reception yards, and then some rushing yards. He was like a good gadget guy that they'd play. I thought he was going to be like their guy. It'd been nice to have him and Debo there, but I don't know if it's an injury or if it's actually this guy beat him out. I don't know why the coach, I don't know why Shanahan, I think his comment kind of came across weird because he was like, yeah, he needs to play better than the guy behind him or something like that. And it was just kind of like, what? What do you mean playing better than the guy behind him?
And that's concerning. That's more concerning than him.
Yeah, it is. But we're also talking about a coach that kind of speaks in riddles too, like him and McVay and other coaches. So whatever comes out of their mouth, we don't really know. Like next week, for all we know, Ayuk comes out and gets 2 touchdowns, gets 30 points. But I also don't play him. You can't. I can't advise you to play a guy who got 0 points. He's coming off an injury, didn't get targeted. He was outsnapped by this other receiver. It's just don't play this guy. It just wouldn't behoove you. I wouldn't panic on him enough to trade him or drop. Definitely not drop him. But I wouldn't trade him either. I'd hold on to him because you're gonna lose so much on getting him. It's like you put this investment in, you're just gonna lose because people are gonna be like, well, I ain't gonna give you more for the guy, so you're gonna be trading him at a deficit. So it's just, I think you just put him on your bench and you pray that he has a good week this week, a good week next week, and then you can start him again. But until then, I don't think you can confidently start the guy. He's a very good player, though. He's awesome. Yep,
agreed with you 100%. So now that we touched on panic, that was everyone we had. I want to transition here to who we think is going to be starts of the week at each position.
It's time for the starts of the week. Yeah!
And who you think, when I say start of the week, we're talking about our criteria here is someone that's going to exceed their projected points, or you think that is going to have a better game than they did last week. And I'll let you start off, Jimmy. Who's your quarterback start of the week this week?
My quarterback start of the week is Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert went up against an extremely tough Washington football team defense, okay? I think we should see a bounce-back game for him. He looked good in a game where he wasn't fantasy relevant. He converted a lot of third downs against a great Washington defense. There's a lot of good things going for him. I don't know, if you remember that one play too when they called it a fumble, when that wasn't a fumble. I felt like that was he clearly threw it, and then they gave him a fumble through the end zone. So that took away points from him. They're against Dallas this week, right? I'm not crazy to say that.
Yep, they're against Dallas.
They're against Dallas. And so I just think that Dallas secondary is going to get run over by those receivers. So I have so much faith in Justin Herbert this week. We saw what he could do last week. He didn't dump off to Eckler, which was weird. I feel like that helps him in points if he's able to figure out that chemistry to receptions. Eckler's such a game maker, like a Kamara. He's a playmaker that you give him the ball and let him run. So they need to kind of maybe get Eckler the ball more. But I think they're just going to run over. And I think if you maybe started him last week and he didn't do that well for you, start Justin Herbert with full confidence this week. Full confidence that he's going to just do amazing. So that's my start of the week, Justin Herbert.
Agree. And it doesn't hurt going against that Dallas secondary. Yep. I'll tell you that. That never hurts. I'll go here. We talked about him earlier with the panic button, but my quarterback is Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is going against the Detroit Lions. We talked about how the Detroit Lions are just going to be a fantasy gold mine in terms of receiving and fantasy players against. I think Aaron Rodgers is obviously going to have a bounce back game. he did talk a lot in the preseason, like Last Dance stuff, So I think he's going to bounce back here. Devonte Adams is obviously going to be his number one go-to guy in that, but he had such a bad game last week where it's just like an outlier game to me. He's still going to be the MVP candidate that he is, and Aaron Rodgers going against that Lions. I love that matchup. Give me Aaron Rodgers.
Yep. All right. So let's move on to the running back. The running back I'm going with, I'm believing in CEH this week. He's against the Ravens. We got all eyes on Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a fun game between the Ravens and the Chiefs. I think it'll be a bounce back for Lamar too. But for CEH, the Baltimore is a good defense, but their defense looked shaky against the Raiders. They might not be the same. They lost Peters, right? They lost Peters.
Yep, Marcus Peters.
And so the line didn't look as good. They gave up the fourth most points to running backs. To Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake combined for the fourth most points for a running back for that first week. So I feel like CEH can maybe exploit that. I think it's going to be probably more of a shootout. I think this game will be closer than people expect. I think the Chiefs like to play closer games. Like you think they're going to blow out a lot of people. They love those close games. They love to play with people a little bit. They like to play with their food, you can almost say, because they'll keep teams in it, and then it's just like, oh, if the Chiefs win, they're like 10 points behind. Oh, the Chiefs win. It's just like it's still like, but yeah. The CEH I think is gonna have a bounce back, really strong game. That volume, he's gonna get there. Like we talk about fantasy and how important volume is. He's one of the running backs who has so much volume, so he should be a factor in receiving targets, rushing, maybe getting some runs in the red zone. Maybe they'll get to the one, and he'll get running in for a touchdown. I don't know, but I believe CEH. Start him, full confidence in him. Sunday Night Football, fun game to watch. CEH.
Love it. I'm going to go a little off script here. I'm going to go off Austin Eckler as my running back start of the week. And I say this because last week we talked about had 0 targets in the passing game. That just doesn't happen for Austin Eckler. It just doesn't happen. Obviously, they are going the committee approach, which is fine. You get a lot of your, all your fantasy points with Austin Eckler with those checkdowns that we were talking about. Him and Herbert last year had a great connection. I expect that to continue. I believe that maybe that the Washington Redskins football team was maybe saying game planning for it a little bit. Yeah. They have good linebackers. I think that with the Dallas secondary, it's going to be a different story. I think that you're going to see a lot of connection there. And it was also encouraging to see that Austin Eckler got a carry.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd bring that up. That is very encouraging.
And obviously, last game with Austin Eckler, there was that hamstring concern as well that sidelined him on Thursday and Friday, even practice. Yeah. I expect him to be a big factor in this next game. So give me Austin Eckler. So
nice,
Jimmy. We're going to talk about a position that's really irrelevant in fantasy almost. You have the top three. Give me your tight end. Who's the tight end?
I'm staying in the same team. Gosh, we have so many Chargers because I'm staying with Jared Cook. Jared Cook. He had I want to say 7 or 8 targets, and he looked great on them. He caught most of his targets. He was a touchdown away from being a top tight end of the week, and he's going against Dallas, who just gave up all these points to Gronk. Okay, Jared Cook is being looked at as underrated as a tight end right now. The Chargers love to target their tight end, as we saw with Hunter Henry. And now they're going up against Dallas, just gave up so many points to the tight end. Jared Cook's my start of the week. Plug him, play him. Seriously, play him over a lot of guys. He's going to be a top 10 tight end, easily a top 10 tight end this week.
Yeah, agreed. Chargers definitely going to be a fun game to watch for fantasy. My tight end this week is going to be Patriots' Jonnu Smith. And I think last game was a big just kind of a measurement of what their two tight end set looks going to look like. And Jonnu Smith was on the field for 70% of the snaps.
Wow.
I think he got 6 or 7 targets that game for 5
receptions. He even got a rush. They rush him sometimes, which is kind of good for a tight end.
He rushed him too. And he did fumble on that rush too. They ended up we were watching it together and they just
flipped him. It was like a weird play.
Yeah. But I think Jonnu, it's really telling that he was on the field for 70% of the snaps, and looks like he's going to be that tight end one. Now, I wanted to just stay away from the obvious tight end starts like the Darren Wallers and the Travis Kelce's and even George Kittle, where you just plug and play him. So I think with Jonnu Smith, while it is a dangerous start of the week, I think that Jonnu Smith going against the Jets had a horrible defense against tight ends last year, and I expect that to continue this year as well. And I think Jonnu Smith's one of those guys that's going to go above his projections this week. So give me Jonnu Smith.
Yeah.
For wide receivers, let's move to wide receivers, and I'll start us off here. I'm going with Allen Robinson.
Guy's a stud.
Allen Robinson had a horrible game, and it wasn't because of him. It was Jalen Ramsey, and Jalen Ramsey's, when you go against the Rams, you just kind of have to expect that your number one receiver is not going to have the greatest game, and it's just a testament to how good Jalen Ramsey is. Nothing against the wide receivers. I mean, it's obvious that they want to throw away from Jalen Ramsey too. So with Allen Robinson, you're going against the Bengals. The Bengals secondary is just, we talk about the Cowboys. They're money to play against. They're going to be that team that you want to play. Your number one wide receiver, your running backs, everything. Give me Cincinnati every week, and I'll show you a championship. But Allen Robinson is so talented. He's Andy Dalton's also getting that revenge game too against the Bengals as well. I expect Allen Robinson to have a day, and I expect him to, be obviously the person that they franchise tagged him to be. So give me Allen Robinson this week.
Yeah, Allen Robinson's a stud. He's like quietly, it's like I've heard people talk about how Allen Robinson will quietly be a top 15 wide receiver. Or top 10 wide receiver. Like he'll end up in the top 10, but he doesn't have that many weeks in the top 10 because he's so consistent. And that's what you drafted him to be, consistent. And we saw already him get targeted so many times. I want to say get targeted 12 times. The routes they had him running were horrible, little slant under routes. I don't know if you noticed that, but I think he ended up getting 10 fantasy points in half PPR, but Allen Robinson, there's just nothing more you could say that exactly what you said than he just start him. But my guy, I'm going how many freaking Chargers am I going with? Because I'm going with another Charger.
You went almost
3 Chargers, 3 out of the 4 Chargers. Because this is how much I believe in this game. So play him, Mike Williams. He had 12 targets last week. Justin Herbert literally said we need to target Mike Williams more. If Mike Williams stays healthy, he's going to be a top receiver, especially in this Dallas game. I want a piece of that game. Obviously, you see how much I'm sold on this game. And I literally have the quarterback, tight end, and one of the receivers in this game. And Nick has the running back. I believe in this game for fantasy value. I think Mike Williams, you play him. There's not much more that needs to be said. He's going to be more involved as long as he stays healthy, which is usually a problem for him. But I think we should see a great week from Mike Williams as well. All right, so before we close it out, we actually want to talk about a couple players, guys to watch this weekend and have on your radar to maybe add to your team. Maybe even if you have an extra spot, add them now because they might blow up, or you wait to the waiver wire and try your luck on getting them on the waiver wire. So the first guy we're bringing up is Tim Patrick. With Jerry Jeudy going down, Tim Patrick slides into that role. We know that Teddy Bridgewater can be very valuable for receivers. So I think Tim Patrick, I added him in leagues already. If you haven't added him, he might already be added in your leagues, but I feel like he's the guy to watch. Nick, what about you? What do you think about him?
I think it's a great opportunity for him. I mean, Tim Patrick's, Cortland Sutton coming off that ACL tear, and then obviously Jerry Jeudy going down. He's the one person that I feel like has been consistently in their preseason game plans, and he showed last week that he was their number one target there. I expect that to continue. I like actually both Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton. I know Sutton had a limited role last week, and they expect that to change this week. But I still believe Tim Patrick's, going to be, to me, he's going to be the number one person that you go with. I take Tim Patrick or Cortland Sutton in that, but I think he's definitely someone that you gotta look for in your league. And when we say guys to watch, we're not talking about like waiver wire ads that you need to have this week. Maybe this is like one step below the waiver wire that you're saying, okay, I'm gonna just monitor this guy. And actually, even one of my buddies showed me that there's a new like feature within fantasy, Yahoo Fantasy, where you can kind of like monitor, and it gives you updates on certain players that you kind of add. So that's kind of something that I would consider doing if you have anyone you want to monitor. But Tim Patrick's definitely that guy for me too.
Yeah.
Definitely interesting. The next guy I want to talk about, Jimmy, is Cole Beasley, and Cole Beasley is just kind of like a sneaky good slot guy. It's just he's not really someone that excites you, right? I mean, Cole Beasley's been around for a while now, and he's always with the Bills. I mean, if you look at the end of last year, like Cole Beasley was so good, like fantasy. He was getting like, I want to say like, over 10 targets each game, and we talk about how like the Bills are just a pass first team. So Cole Beasley, he got like 12 targets last week. I mean, that's something that you need to consider. And while he may be, not on the waiver wire for you in your league, but if he's someone that you need to either, like you said, pick up or keep an eye on.
Yeah. That's a good guy, too. If you're in a running back situation, a guy to keep an eye on is definitely Mark Ingram. Now, Mark Ingram you have to take with a very big grain of salt, like huge, because we're in a positive game script, and how many times do we think they're actually going to be in a positive game script? Not many. He had 26 rushes, though. He's their main rusher. I mean, those other two, Philip Lindsay and David Johnson, all three of them had a touchdown that game too. So it is something to worry about, but he's someone to watch. I mean, 2 years ago, he was so good for the Ravens. And the Ravens kind of weirdly just like gave up on him and brought in J.K. Dobbins, like it was just like he kind of became an afterthought, but he was very fantasy relevant a couple years back. And maybe the Texans' offense isn't as bad as we'd like to think. I don't know enough about them, I feel like, with like their offensive line. Maybe their offensive line is better than we give them credit for. We're going to have to see, and he's someone I feel like needs to be monitored.
Yep, agreed. Well said. Yeah. Next person who I would want to point out here, someone that we need to watch, is Jalen Rager. Jalen Rager, don't think he even got targeted till like the second quarter, but he had a good game. He had six targets, 5 receptions, and a touchdown for like 50 yards. And it's kind of same thing with the NFC East. I think the Eagles showed that they're the best team that has the best chance of winning that, and maybe they're not as bad as we thought. And Jalen Rager, we often forget Jalen Rager was a first-round pick. He was drafted before Justin Jefferson. And I'm not saying that has like big significance, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of first-rounders that don't make it. But I think Jalen Rager has the talent. It's just more so, is he in the right system? Is he in the right quarterback situation? But I think Jalen Rager is someone that he's one more good week away from you needing to add him. And he's definitely got the skill set. It's whether you believe in the Eagles' offense this year. And I think that the Eagles' offense is going to be good this year with Jalen Hurts. I think they're going to be the top team in the NFC East. So Jalen Rager, for me, is an obvious candidate. That's someone you need to look at.
Yeah. The last guy we have here is a tight end by the name of Cole Comet. All right, last week, Cole Comet against the Rams, might I add, 7 targets, 5 receptions for 42 yards. He ends up having 6.7 fantasy points. Is it that this amazing game that he had? No, it's not an amazing game. But Cole Komet last year was drafted in the 2nd round. He's a big boy. He's just gonna probably could be the future. I heard something even they're saying like Justin Fields had a good connection in training camp with Cole Komet, and he's someone to watch as a tight end position. Eventually, there's going to be young tight ends coming up. We have there's like Pitts, who's like a generation tight end basically. But there's eventually when the Kelseys and the Kittles are gone, the Wallers are gone, there's going to be more tight ends. Try to find them, and it could be Cole Komet. Maybe we'll see. I just feel like he's somebody to watch. He's got a lot of targets, and against the Rams, he did not that bad. You know, they got good linebackers, good safeties, good DBs. So it's hard to beat the Rams, and he did okay for that game. You know, I mean, he did just as good as Logan Thomas did for me this week, and I was like, okay, so Cole Kmet's someone worth taking a look at. You know, yeah.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. Cole Comet, definitely someone that needs to be on your radar, but I digress.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, we made it through week 1. We'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you so much for watching and joining us today. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you can be notified when we drop in another episode for you guys. And we really appreciate it. And if you have any questions for us, maybe we'll highlight them in the next one. I wanted to maybe incorporate like a mailbag in the future, but we'll see. Things are yet to be seen. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching the Fantasy Football Bros podcast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.